Our top story: after decades of waiting, the Indian Air Force has finally received its new Rafale fighters. These are the first Western fighters to be inducted into the Indian Air Force in decades and adds a capability that no other Air Force in Asia has. The moment the Indian Air Force has been waiting for. The first Rafale fighter aircraft touching down at the Ambala Air Base, opening a new chapter for the I.A.F's capabilities and bringing an end to a 2-decade-long process to get the French fighter. Earlier today, the Rafales took off from the French I.A.F Air Base in the United Arab Emirates. En route, they were greeted by the crew of INS Kolkata, the Navy's most powerful destroyer.
Leader, Indian Naval Warship Delta 63. Welcome to the Indian Ocean.
Naval Warship Delta 63, Arrow Leader, many thanks. Most reassuring to have an Indian warship guarding the seas.
Arrow Leader Delta 63. May you touch the sky with glory. Happy landings.
Delta 63, Arrow Leader, wish you fair winds. Happy hunting over and out.
After finally touching down, the jets received this water cannon salute. The 5 Air Force officers flew the jets for over 10 hours from France, stopping overnight at the I.A.F Air Base in the United Arab Emirates before flying to India today.
The India-specific enhancements make the Rafale more potent than what it is flying in the French skies today.
The Defence Minister Rajnath Singh was the first to tweet out video of the aircraft over Indian airspace, and the Prime Minister tweeted as well. India has acquired 36 Rafale fighters in a 58,000 crore deal. 2 squadrons of 18 aircraft each will be formed. The Rafale operated by India is a more advanced variant of the fighter France operates. Key to the Rafale are its weapons: the Meteor missile that hits aerial targets farther out than any missile of its class, the Scalp cruise missile which hits ground targets 300 kilometers away, and the Mica air-to-air missile, a versatile weapon system. The Indian Air Force will now integrate its new Rafales with its other fighter aircraft, also integrate it with engineering and logistics support. The goal is simple: these fighters need to be ready when the I.A.F needs them, and they need to be available for several decades. Vishnu Shom for NDTV. Well, joining us now, Air Marshal Anil Khosla, the former Vice Chief of the Indian Air Force. Thank you, sir, very much for joining us this evening. You must be a relieved man as Vice Chief. This is something that you were pursuing very, very actively. There were periods in which so many Air Force officers didn't know which way or what would happen in the court. Finally, it all worked out, and the first Rafales are here. Are you a relieved man?
Of course, Vishnu. Not only me, many of the Air Force veterans as well as serving officers will be relieved that finally this activity is fructifying and the aircraft have finally landed in our
And Air Marshal, in terms of capability, what is it that the Rafale gives us which we wanted?
It gives us advantage in 2 ways. One is the numerical drawdown which is taking place as it is. Our squadrons are down to 30 squadrons. The requirement is 40 plus 42, and so the numerical drawdown it will reduce by these 2 squadrons coming, and subsequently more will be procured as well as the indigenized aircraft will come in. That is one. And second is, as far as technology is concerned, it has got all advanced systems and weapon systems as well as survivability systems. So it will add to our capability as far as quality is concerned. Specifically mentioning it is the capability enhancement will be in terms of ability to operate in high altitude as well as mountainous terrain.
Air Marshal, this comes with a lot of upgrades specific to India. How is it that these upgrades actually make this platform more advanced than the Rafale in service presently with the French Air Force?
When you ask for country-specific upgrades, it's not necessarily that you are looking for. There are 2 ways of looking at it. One is that whatever is in existence there, you improve upon it. And second is you ask for upgrades which are your country specific. That means you have something in mind. You already have some equipment, either indigenous or procured earlier, which you want to integrate, or you have some system which is already existing, which you want to integrate with the system. So keeping these two things in mind, the upgrades are asked for.
And in terms of a comparison with China, I don't know if the word comparison is accurate, but in terms, because they have a different philosophy with some of their frontline aircraft, which are stealth aircraft now, the J-20. This isn't stealth, but this is our frontline platform. How would that compare in a situation where there is potential for air combat?
Vishnu, before I answer your question, let me make a comment. I've seen so many inductions in last 40 years, but I never seen so much of hype being created for this particular induction. I think we have gone slightly overboard, and on the lighter vein, if media had its way, maybe these aircraft would have done some mission en route and then landed here.
Yes, I know. They shouldn't have stopped in Ambala. They should have headed straight for Ladakh, sir. That's the joke. But go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, enough comparisons have been done in the media, I think, about these aircraft comparison with Pakistan F-16 and the Chinese J-20 or 30 But I have a different view of looking at it. When you compare with Chinese aircraft, simplistic comparison where, you just compare the height, weight, and wingspan and the number of hard points and the number of weapons carried and this thing. There are a whole lot of factors which need to be considered, like sortie generation rate, survivability, ability to operate in high altitude. Then there are a whole lot of factors which become, if you want to truly compare them capability-wise.
Sure.
Then other thing is, when you take Chinese aircraft, three things you need to consider. One is their claims are on paper. That means they claim. And Chinese are for, exaggerating. If it's a 5 feet person, they will show it as 10 feet. How far it is true is doubtful, because they keep everything very close to their chest. So that is point number one. Point number two is that technology is all, not a clean technology. Most of the things are either taken by industrial espionage or somewhere from the Western side or the Russian side, and then reverse engineering goes on. So it's a bit of a mixed technology, whereas these Rafales have been, coming from a place where the aircraft are being manufactured, the good aircraft like Mirage 2000 earlier, and they've been improved upon. The third thing which need to be kept in mind is that these aircraft are already flying with the French Air Force as well as Navy, as well as Qatar and Egypt, and they have already seen action in 3 or 4 places. Whereas the Chinese aircraft are not proven. So first is their capability, whatever is being claimed is doubtful. Secondly, they're not even proven. They don't even fly with anybody else, so except for the exercises with Pakistan.
Yeah.
So I think these factors we should keep in mind.
Air Marshal, I've got a surprise for you. We've got an interesting package, and it's really something we need to look at. Here's a blast from the past. The first French origin fighter of the Indian Air Force was the Dassault Ouragan. It was named Tufani by Prime Minister Nehru. 71 were originally ordered, followed by another 33. This was 67 years ago that the first came to India. The first batch of 4 Ouragans, and we've got these exclusive pictures, were ferried from Istres in France to Palam in India, leaving on the 15th of November 1953. Logistic support was provided by a single Indian Air Force Dakota. They staged through 12 areas, including Karachi in Pakistan. They were led by Group Captain Arvind Mulgaonkar, who later became Air Chief. Compare that with today's Rafale, which with air-to-air refueling flew one stop to Ambala. And what we can show you now is the actual logbook of one of the pilots, and you can see the routes that they flew way back then. And there are 12 routes which they flew from France to Tunis to Idris, onto several other areas: Baghdad, Sharjah, Karachi, Palam, Ambala. Now this is fascinating because they flew and landed in 1953 in Karachi on their way to India and bombed Karachi, these very same planes, 13 years later. Air Marshal, my question is this: we've got a very, very long history with French combat aircraft. It's a remarkable history, 67 years. Air Marshal, go ahead. Your comments on
Yeah.
67 years of a history with French fighter aircraft in the Indian Air Force.
Yeah, we have good history with the French, and we have been procuring these aircraft. But let me take you to, and we had very good experiences with the Frenchies. So the aircraft which we bought were very good. Even the Mirage 2000, if you've seen in the recent years, which has been operating in our, and seen action in quite a few of our wars, have proved themselves to be very, very valuable. So we have a good experience, but what I would like to bring out here is, a lot of debate goes on whether on two accounts. One is we have too many varieties of aircraft as logistic support. Well, both have got advantages and disadvantages with having too many types of aircraft. Advantages are that in case, availability of one is reduced, at least we have options available with the other. Second is we get the best of out of all sort of technologies from different countries. And on the flip side is that is inventory management is difficult. Maintenance problems come up because of too many aircraft. That is one point. And second issue is that when you get these aircraft, you also acquire the war fighting mechanism of these associated with these aircraft. So that is also, I would say, a bit of an advantage.
Right.
So the second aspect which I want to make a point here is the debate also goes on indigenization. I'm a firm believer that finally we have to rely on Atmanirbharta. That means we have to develop our own. But this leapfrog which we've been doing is, I'm afraid, not worked so far. We need to produce quality aircraft in time, in adequate numbers, so that we do not rely on buying from outside. So these 2 points I'd like to make with relation to this.
Air Marshal Khosla, wonderful speaking to you. Thank you so much for joining us. One way or the other, it's a welcome day, I'm sure you agree, for the Indian Air Force. You began with that. And we've got two other excellent flyers themselves, Air Commodore Harpreet Basra and Squadron Leader Sameer Joshi. Both of them are Mirage 2000 pilots. Both of them have served in combat situations. Thank you both very much for being with us. Before I come across to you, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the weapon systems which actually exist on the Rafale. Let's play out that first set of shots which we have of the Meteor missile. The Meteor missile can hit targets more than 150 odd kilometers away. That means it outranges anything which the Chinese or the Pakistanis have. So let's play this video out one more time before I get comment on this, and then we'll talk about the next weapon system in a little while. I'm just going to play this out one more time. The Meteor missile system. You can see it fire over there in just a few moments. But let me take that first question to Sameer. If we had this a day after Balakot, what would it have meant for us, Sameer?
Vishnu, first and foremost, Meteor is without doubt the longest range missile right now in the world. Longest range air-to-air missile in the world. I would just want to highlight a very specific feature before I answer your main question. That besides the long range, it is, it has a very, very high, a very large no escape zone. Now, this is the magical envelope through which, any fighter which is targeted with this kind of weapon system has a very low chance of escaping the no escape zone. This no escape zone of the Meteor is about 2 to 2.5 times that of the AMRAAM missile, which the Indian Sukhoi 30s faced against the Pakistani F-16s last year. So now answering your main question, I think with the Meteor, first and foremost, probably the I.A.F would not have dared what it practically attempted to do as part of the operations then. Simply because, the I.A.F, all the while showing a very high degree of offensive nature in the so-called attack, was playing it very safe. And safety is one feature which rapidly shrinks when a Meteor is fired against you.
Yep.
So with its long range and, a no escape zone, a very large no escape zone,
yep,
I don't think things would have panned out the way it worked out for the Pakistani Air Force.
Okay.
In my opinion, this, their operation may not have even taken place the way they would have envisaged.
Okay, I want to roll the next set of shots and then get the Air Commodore to comment on them. This is the Scalp cruise missile, very long range, 300 plus kilometers away. It can strike targets. It flies very low. It's an extremely expensive weapon system. It's meant to be deployed against very high value targets. And it's meant to be fired out at extreme ranges, whereby our aircraft are actually potentially in relatively safe areas when they fire these missiles, not exposing themselves. And then these can actually fly a long distance to prefed coordinates and strike that target. They can also, through data links and the like, be guided to alternate targets if the need is required. They also have a satellite interface as a method of guidance. Air Commodore Basra, what capability what does this capability mean for the Indian Air Force?
Once again, good evening, Vishnu, and it's nice to be on panel with one of our role models, Air Marshal Khosla, and he's been instructed during our times, and he's covered most of these aspects of the capability of the Rafale. Specifically to Meteor, see what we're looking at
if
is,
you can answer about Scalp,
sorry,
sir.
yeah,
Scalp,
I mean, coming back to Scalp, of course, Meteor, Samir was discussing. So all the weapons, whether it is the Meteor or the Scalp, we're looking at large standoff ranges. We don't want to get into the enemy air defense, launch capabilities. So therefore, Meteor has a huge amount of standoff range. If you can launch a missile at 300 kilometers, and after that it is autonomous, it will go and hit the target with a very good accuracy. So you don't have to go close to the target. I mean, we read about whatever was there in the open sources about the Balakot strikes. The Balakot strikes, we fired the Spice class of aircraft, which is approximately about, say about 80 to 100 kilometers range. And with a 300 kilometer range, you can imagine what type of targets you can engage deep inside the enemy territory.
Okay, we're going to roll out the next set of shots. This is the Mica missile, which is a primary weapon carried by the Rafale. And it comes on the Rafale. It's there on the Mirage 2000 as well. It comes with different types of guidance sensors on board, an infrared sensor, as well as a radar guided missile setup, depending on the variant which is used. It's considered a very versatile missile. Samir, when we call it a versatile missile, what does that actually mean?
Vishnu, it primarily means that the Mica class of missile can be employed within visual range as well as the beyond visual range envelope. This missile is going to replace all your short range as well as a long range missile, and it encompasses both the characteristics in a single weapon system. The Mica can be used for very close range targets, which can be engaged in both infrared as well as the radar guided mode, as well as the beyond visual range targets. If I take you back again to the Indo-Pakistan engagement last year, what is very relevant to note is that the Pakistani Air Force's JF-17s were very much trying their best to stay out of the envelope of the Mica when they were engaged with two Mirage 2000s to the north in North Kashmir. So, I mean, the enemy does not have the knowledge of the weapon system. That is a stand we all know about. But Mica bears and gets on table capabilities which are as good as, if not, better than AMRAAM in a lot of facets, versatility being one of them.
Yeah. Air Commodore Basra, when we talk about modern air warfare, the electronic spectrum is so important. Electronic warfare is so important. And that's something which the Rafale is blessed with. It's got an electronic warfare system called the Spectra, which is, from all accounts, superlative. It can be used to protect the aircraft and the pilot. It can be used to collect information as well. What does the addition of this onboard suite in the Rafale aircraft actually mean for the I.A.F?
See, basically any electronic warfare suite should have certain elements. It should have a method to gather the enemy information, which could be in terms of the radar warning receivers, certain ESM receivers, and it should also have the ability to jam the enemy radars over a wide band of range. So with the India-specific enhancements, we have gone in from one end of the spectrum in terms of frequency to a very different end of the spectrum of the radar frequencies. So therefore, it can do multiple jobs at the same time. And should any weapon get engaged onto you, that means if you're under threat, it should have the ability to dispense flares, and it should have the ability to dispense chaff. And all this should be automatic without the interference of the, without the intervention of the pilot, because it is time consuming. So all this is very well integrated in a Spectra class of EW equipment. What is also very important is, see, whenever you have jammers operating, there will be some kind of interference on your own radars. I mean, this is normal common sense. So there has to be a certain amount of time sharing, and the logic has to be there with the radar, and a full integration of the package has to be there, which is excellent, which is one of the highest standards in the on board the Rafale. We saw it to some extent on the Mirage, and this is definitely a step ahead with the AESA radar of the Rafale.
Sure.
So all in all, coupled with the radar and the electronic equipment, I think we have one of the top equipment available. And like the Air Marshal was saying, they may claim that the J-20 is a 5th generation aircraft, and they may claim that all these systems are coming on board. But please remember, this could be piecemeal and not fully integrated the way it is on the Rafale.
Final question to you, Samir. Stealth versus non-stealth. The Chinese have a plane called the J-20. It's new. It's an intriguing design with interesting aerodynamic characteristics. And it is stealth from what we understand. So therefore, how does one counter that with an aircraft like the Rafale, which is not stealth?
So it's a two-facet answer to this. First, the J-20, going by whatever information is available and the analysis that most of us have done back in India, what is very apparent that the platform is still work in progress, and the stealth characteristics, at least in an Omni, pickup role, are still questionable. What, yes, it does bring onto the table is stealth characteristics from the frontal quarters. So that is where, and it also falls in place with the initial employment philosophy, the way the Chinese Air Force is employing the J-20 for very long-range frontal mode attacks, and thereafter, after launch, the missile, being steered by another sensor, which can, continue eliminating the target till the time the missile goes active. So J-20, is it stealth? Yes, it is designed to being stealth, but has it reached that maturity level where it can compete with platforms like the F-35 and the F-22? I seriously doubt that. This is a capability, this capability will take years to handle. The Chinese are very much, working very hard towards it. What problems for the Indian Air Force? Yes, the problems will be the initial acquisition of such a platform.
All right. Well, fascinating detail over there from Samir. And it's great to have Air Commodore Basra as well joining us on this conversation. I'd like to thank all of you very much for being with us. It's a big day for the Indian Air Force. The first 5, and let's play out a few images. The first 5 Rafale jets now in Ambala, adding a huge capability to the Indian Air Force. And remember, it's a 58,000 crore rupee deal. 36 aircraft eventually to be acquired, many in the Air Force feel that many more need to come.